Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Salesforce for Everyone YouTube channel. Today, we have a guest who is really sort of this guy who has come out of left field in the Salesforce ecosystem and specifically in sort of the Salesforce social media side of things. So, of course, Salesforce social media isn't all that hyped, but on LinkedIn, he has definitely sort of created room for himself and emerged as sort of the social media guy in the LinkedIn Salesforce space. And he's also got a YouTube channel. So you may know who I'm talking about, but this is Jordan Nelson, and I'm excited to have him on the channel. And I think you're going to be really excited by this conversation because he has a real story that I think is going to be impactful to a lot of people in the audience. And so I would just hang out, listen to this story, and get ready to be amazed. So welcome to the channel, Jordan.
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm live from my closet here for you guys. So super excited to be here with Brad and tell you just a nice average Joe story here about kind of where I got to where I am.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on. Obviously, excited to have you. So Jordan and I have had a few minutes here to talk before actually going live with the video or doing the recording here. And like I thought Jordan was interesting just based on his LinkedIn post and sort of the stuff that I'd seen. And it turns out he isn't. No, he's way more interesting than I thought he was. And so I think you guys are going to be excited to hear not just his story, but I think he's got a lot of actionable tips that you can take away from this and take your Salesforce career, whether it has started or whether you're still trying to sort of get it off the ground. But he definitely has some key information to help people reach that next level, no matter where you're at. So yeah, tell us a little bit about like what you're up to now. Like, obviously I know you've been posting a lot on LinkedIn. You've been doing your YouTube videos and that's been, it's catching my eye. So I know a lot of other people are noticing you. So yeah, tell us what you're up to.
Yeah. So as of right now, I'm working for a company called Health Equity. I'm over there. It's not a consulting firm of any sort. They're actually a financial tech company. So I'm in a spot right now. I live out in Utah and live in a city called Lehigh. And if anybody's heard of it, they're kind of blowing up with a nickname called Silicon Slopes, kind of play off of the Silicon Valley out here. But really, it's just a big tech kind of explosion area. So working over there at a financial tech company as a senior Salesforce admin for them.
Very cool. So obviously you're in Salesforce. How long have you been working in sort of the Salesforce space?
I've been in the Salesforce space roughly about 3 years now.
Okay, so about 3 years now. So you got in 3 years ago? So 2017-ish. And what got you into Salesforce? Like, how did you stumble across it? Did you hear about it and make like a dedicated effort to be a Salesforce pro? Or, how did you decide Salesforce is the way I'm going to go for the next 3 years of my life?
Yeah, it's actually a pretty funny story. And I feel like your introduction was right on point because I feel like when I tell this to family and friends, they're the exact same way where they just think it's kind of this ridiculous pivot that I had made and kind of got to like what I'm doing now. But yeah, if we rewind just 3 years ago, I actually had no intentions of getting into Salesforce. I didn't even know what Salesforce was. Didn't know that it was a huge company, none of that stuff. So I had no details on really anything of what's Salesforce related that I do now. At the time, 3 years ago, I was kind of doing some school. My parents live out in Houston, Texas. I'm 26 now. I had just decided that right as I was kind of entering into college, that I was going to move back to Utah. So I'm from Utah. We grew up here, but my family had decided to move to Texas for my dad's job. So I decided to move back. And of course, once you get a little bit of freedom at that age, I decided like, I don't really love this school thing. I don't really want to keep doing it. I had gone long enough to get my associate's degree, and that was kind of it. Like, I just wasn't super interested in doing it. And at about that same time, right as I was like transitioning, I've always been really into cars. So I decided that I was going to go ahead and try out a business of my own. So I decided that business was going to be a car wrap company. So I started doing that. I actually started doing that in Texas. My dad was nice enough to let me wrap his truck before I left. Total mess, but really nice of him to let me try. I had started something on Instagram. That's kind of how I started my business. I just decided, I was going to make a company name and, put some posts out there, tell people what I was about, and start off small and just kind of work my way up. So started off just doing little things, logos, badges, eventually got to like full cars. And then it progressed pretty well, I guess you could say. Like I got my own shop. I had some employees. I was doing a lot of it. And all while this is happening, right? Like I still have this mentality from my parents and the safe route and all those things that you always hear your whole life, and especially coming right out of college. I had decided to stop going to school, so my parents were probably a little bit hesitant about that. So the way that I justified it to probably myself as well as to them was like, hey, look, I got this business going. It's going good. And at the same time, I also have the safe route, right? Which is me over at this company. And I was doing like a part-time job, and really how I got into it, it was a company called jet.com. Cool story is that they are no longer funded. They were bought out by Walmart e-commerce. And I think as of this year, they actually said they're done with the Jet brand. But they had just opened up a place here in Utah. I saw it like online, your typical, I'm a college kid, don't really have a ton of skills at this point. So I'm like, yeah, I could go work there, probably get into the call center. So get into the call center, getting $15 an hour. Really liked it, obviously. And I was able to kind of work my way up, like since it was a brand new company. So went from being like in the call center to our partner operations team, eventually got on to like as a business analyst is really where I ended there. That's kind of like my first introduction to Salesforce. I was a business analyst, and then we started getting some delegations. Walmart e-commerce had bought this company out, so they were trying to figure out how to cut some costs. They had a lot of people out in California, so obviously we're cheaper out here in Utah, so they started pushing some of those tasks towards us. So did some very, very light Salesforce stuff. I'm talking like reset passwords, set up a brand new user. And that's really it, like reporting, that played into what I was doing as a business analyst. But that wasn't like the majority of my time, I would say. I kind of gotten introduced to that. So that's really where I was 3 years ago. I was doing this, car wrap business on the side. Well, I kept my part-time job because I felt like it was a safe route and things along those lines. And so I started kind of moving forward with it, got up in the company, like I just told you, to a business analyst. The whole car wrap thing didn't really pan out the way I expected. I loved cars. I still love cars. But what I did realize, and I felt like took a lot of self-awareness on my part to like let go of the pride after 4 years was, look, man, I'm not really making it happen. Like I'm not great on these finances. I'm not great on scaling it. I'm not great on managing these different people and trying to juggle that with this part-time job that I have, and all that kind of stuff. So that's really when I decided, okay, I'm going to drop this shop, and this Salesforce thing could be cool. There was a guy at the time, we had one of our headquarters out in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Okay.
And he was a Salesforce admin. And we had talked with him quite a few times. He was certified. I had a rough idea of like the money he made, keeping into consideration he's Hoboken, so probably some inflation there from where I'm at. But it was still really good money, obviously, from where I was at. At the time, it was probably around 40K. And I decided, I'm going to drop this, and instead I'm going to go all in on this Salesforce thing. I don't really know what it is, but I'm going to apply for a job as a Salesforce admin and hopefully go from there. So that's kind of brought me to where I'm at now. That was kind of like where I started off.
Nice. Okay. So you apply for this job, and what do you think got you that first job? Like, did you have a connection? Like you knew somebody kind of thing?
Yeah, good question. And I know nobody likes this answer because it's like a harder one. And It was probably more just luck, to be honest.
That's fine. Yeah.
I had applied for several positions, turned down for several positions. There was a company here that reached back out. I was able to kind of get through the interviews with them. And it just kind of worked out from there, but it was cold. And I know that doesn't happen often. Yeah, it was a cold one. I would say to anybody listening, the perspective there though is keep in mind, I don't have the numbers, but keep in mind, I was also applying for quite a bit. Like I had decided I want to do this. So I don't really care how many times I get rejected. I'm just going to keep applying until I get this job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my first job story is like awful. And it's like, I had just finished college and I wanted to be a high school teacher. I wanted to be a high school teacher and I could not find a job. And I got a job at a bank, working in like operations, and I did not like it at all. And I was there 6 months and I started applying for everything. I mean, I literally went back to my college and interviewed for a position to sit in on seminars and type out what the professor said so that the deaf students had a translation. So that was like, I was applying to go do that. And also happened to apply for a junior Salesforce administrator role, which I knew equally nothing about, and landed the Salesforce admin role. And come to find out, I was actually like fourth in line for the job. And they hired someone else who ended up leaving. Then they hired someone internally who ended up wanting to go back to their other department. And then the third person they wanted to hire had already been hired somewhere else. And then they were like, "Hey, Brad, do you want to do?" And then I was like, yeah,
I'll take it.
And it worked out. So I was, trust me, I do not have a glamorous first-time job, but I think our stories are going to align to some degree when it comes to getting the first job. And I think you said you were making about 40,000 at your first job.
Yes.
And I mean, you got to keep in mind, we're not talking like, for me, when I tell my story, it's like in 2011, I get my first job and I'm making $36,000. And it's like, well, that's 2011. Well, we can talk about 2017 where you got your first job making $40,000, right? So the numbers for the starting job, you know, are not that different for us. And I think where our stories are going to align are that when we got that first job, we took the opportunity that was in front of us and we moved forward with it. And we didn't sit around and I mean, maybe we had our moments where we thought Salesforce is a lot, or maybe this isn't for me. But at the end of the day, I'm certain that we took the time and the opportunity to, at least I know for myself, to put my head down and say, you know, I'm going to take this opportunity. It's right in front of me. I'm going to lean into it. I'm going to figure out what Salesforce is about. And in 2011, there weren't, 20 different YouTube channels talking about how much people are making as Salesforce admins. There was no trailhead. There was nothing. Like I was studying, like you talk about Quizlet doing flashcards. I had an actual deck of flashcards in my backpack.
You were Quizlet.
Rubber band. I had my very own portable Quizlet, Right. I was quite literally flipping flashcards at my desk at work. Try to get these, pass these exams. But all of that to say, we all start somewhere. And I think that's great. So from, you tried your own thing and that's perfectly fine. And you had a regular job making $15 an hour. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And then you pivoted into Salesforce. And I think there are a lot of people who are like, I want to pivot into Salesforce, but I don't have a tech background. Well, hello, like neither did this guy. Like I want to pivot into Salesforce, but I've worked in other technologies. Can I really do it? Like, seriously, you have a background in other technologies and you're not sure you can do it? Like, of course you can do it.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that should be sort of a takeaway at this moment is like, if you don't think you can do Salesforce, you've lost your mind. Like, don't count yourself out. At least let Salesforce count you out. Like, I don't know. I could go for days, but No,
I totally agree. And to kind of step into that is like, I guess we all kind of do that when we're looking at a new job. I can see the natural tendency to do that. Cause I would even say probably when I got that $15 an hour job, right? Like in the call center, I'm like, it was an e-commerce company. And I'm like, what do I know about e-commerce? And then when I had started, I felt the same way. Like, man, this is way over my head and it's $15 an hour, right? It's a starting job. And it felt way over my head and there was challenges there. So I get the natural tendency, but I 100% agree with you. Like there's really no excuse really to like look at to say, oh, I should be disqualified because I did this or I did that, because I think that's what my story shows, right? Where it's like, I was wrapping cars. I really didn't have too much passion at the time in this call center, because that was more of like the backup. Like I wanted to go all in on this car thing. So, you know, all my spare time after work wasn't going into Salesforce. It wasn't going into this e-commerce company. It was going into, how do I market? How do I actually wrap cars better? How do I start a business?
And we're talking,
so I think that's huge.
I think on top of that, I think we should point out that we're talking no 4-year degree, right? Like everybody thinks you have to have a 4-year degree to get a real job. You probably need a master's degree to get a real job these days. Like that's the way things are going. It's like, if you can't get a job with a little college, you can probably get a job with a lot of college. And the average college graduate, like go look it up. Average college graduate spends $122,000 on college for 4 years. Average college graduate makes $50,000 when they graduate. Like,
right. Yeah. So no college degree.
Yep. So obviously there's a path for everyone. And I think that's, if you have a college degree, congratulations, because the path is even better for you. Right. I mean,
more of advantage.
Yeah. You have an advantage. If you have a bit of a tech background or even anything like slightly related to tech, you have a bit of an advantage. But even if you have no college degree, no tech background, you still have a completely fair advantage. You just have to take your shot. Okay, cool. So from there, obviously, we know where you are today. We know that you're working for a company. You've been there. You've been in Salesforce for 3 years now. So we know you didn't throw in the towel at any point. So where did your career progress from job number one? And let's talk about sort of how you progressed from where you were 3 years ago to where you are today.
Yeah. So I think picking up kind of where I left off with you guys is, basically I'm at this point in my life. I don't have a degree, as Brad has said here. I have an associate's, whatever that's worth, probably not much, right? So I don't have a bachelor's degree. I tried out this car wrap thing. Doesn't really work out. I'm at a point in my life where kind of need to make some bigger decisions. Reason being, I'm deciding to get married at that point. And the person I was dating, my wife now, she was always super supportive, like never tried to tell me I wasn't going to be the greatest car wrapper out there or West Coast Customs, right? Like if I wanted to do it, she was going to support me. So I want to throw that out there too, that there was no like pressure that way. I could have continued to do that and she would have been fine with me doing that. But at the same time, I was, trying to wake up and smell the roses, I guess you could say, and say like, let's be honest with myself. How's this going? Been doing it 4 years. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's not panning out the way I expect. I could maybe stick with it and see how it goes. But it was also with my personality and things that I felt I was not good at with the business was also really taxing and just didn't feel like it was for me. And take that how you want, I guess, people listening. But I think my self-awareness kicked in there of like, let's be honest, do I like or am I good at doing this? Like being an entrepreneur. I think my context to that was I'm a big Gary Vee kind of guy. I love watching his videos. So at the time, I'm probably crushing it with his videos. Like, getting into this freaking business, right? So I'm hyped on this guy. And I think that's where it kicked in because he would talk a lot about that. And so probably props to him where he would say that often, like, you should not be an entrepreneur because you like who I am as an entrepreneur. You should be a teacher if you like to teach. You should be, whatever it is that you should be based upon your personality, your likes and all that. So not to take too much time on that, but that was kind of the thought process of like moving on. So eventually move on from there, go all in on Salesforce, know this one guy essentially in Hoboken, New Jersey. We weren't close at the time. And I decide to kind of ask him a few things when he would come into town of, certification questions, what he does, how much he gets paid if he's cool telling me that. Gave me all that information and I, decided to go for it, got the job, moved on from Walmart e-commerce at that time, moved on to my next job. And it happened to be a pretty well-known name in my area, my little ecosystem, which I think really helped as far as reputation goes. So it was sweet that it panned out that way because I really was rejected at quite a few places for just not having the expertise, didn't have a degree, didn't have anything really to showcase that I could do this. But they took a chance on me, and I really appreciated it. And I felt like I did a really good job when I moved in there, because it kicked my butt. When I first moved in, there was a lot of stuff where I was like, oh man, this is not resetting passwords for a living.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was, right? This is so much more of an animal. In fact, they have a whole team built out that I didn't know existed either. So I got in there, and it was great because there was some people that had a lot of experience.
Okay.
I learned a lot of best practices from these guys. So it really kind of set the cadence, I would say, for me, of like, wow, these people are making a career out of this. This isn't like another, little side job I'm getting. I could actually do this for a while. And then that really changed my mentality, along with not knowing. I would say that I'm a pretty competitive person. So the fact of just maybe not really looking good for myself, like an employer that trusted me and hired me, that's not really on me to be like, oh, well, that's a bummer. Like, I'm not good, like I want to make sure that I'm like doing my part. Like, you hired me for a reason. I want to live up to that expectation, if not more. So I did a lot of trailhead at that point. Did a lot of, training for super badges, trying to get super badges, studying for a certification so I could get my admin one. And then that snowballed into probably what we're going to get into here a little bit later, so I won't jump the gun, but that got into, I would say making a little bit of a name for myself.
Okay.
Maybe it didn't turn out the way that I think it did. Maybe somebody's going to watch this that I know and tell me that I'm full of it, but I felt like it did. Someone reached out to me for the next position. I went over there, and then same thing happened again to where I'm at today. So I would just say from that point, moving to where I am today, it's been a lot of like living up to those expectations, really putting in the work, really putting in the time to build out a portfolio, if you will, a LinkedIn presence, so that people could find me, because I feel like I'm a good worker, I'm a good employee, and I want to do really good job when I get hired at wherever I'm working. So that's really pushed me where I'm at.
That's awesome. So let's sort of just hit the facts. Like, you went first job, 40K. Now, how many jobs have you worked? So how many different Salesforce positions have you held now?
2, 3. This is my fourth, if you include
so
the very first one.
Salesforce position, and we're talking, and so 3 years, 4 positions, right? And if you're not aware, if you're watching this and you're not aware, that's totally normal. So I was like, I think I definitely worked. The longest I'd ever worked at a company was 18 months. I worked at a company for a month one time. I worked at a company for 7 months one time. So as much as you're going to hear that mentality from, especially like people in management or older people and your parents, that they're going to tell you like, you got to be loyal, or people are and that might be true at some companies, but I can tell you in the Salesforce space, the fact of it is you end up job hopping because these companies refuse to give you a raise. You get a raise after a year, and you get like a 5 or 10% raise. And a lot of people consider that good, but in the Salesforce space, it's not. You don't go from entry-level Salesforce employee and then 5 years later go to intermediate, and then 5 years later go to senior, and then 10 years later you can be the manager of the team. Like, Salesforce is pretty much, you go from entry level to top notch in like 5 years. Like it escalates so quickly. You're like year 1 junior, year 2 senior, year 3 consultant, year 4 you're running your own business. Like, it's just nuts how fast it goes. And companies haven't quite caught up to that yet. They're doing better. But the fact is, every single year, your first 3 years, you should probably be getting close to, after your first 1 or 2 years, you should probably double your income. After 3 or 4 years, you should probably add another 50% on top, right? So it escalates extremely quickly. So I see some people say, like, you'll hear me preaching, your first job, you should be making $60,000. And they're like, I already make $70,000. And I'm like, yeah, that's nothing. Like, give it 2 or 3 years and you're going to make 6 figures. So, but typically the route that I talk about is get your first job, work 2 or 3 years, maybe then go into consulting where you can make consulting money. and make great money, and you're going to make six figures as a consultant with 2 to 3 years experience. So
Right.
you went a little bit different route, and I was surprised to hear that. You don't hear this too often. So you get to your third, maybe your fourth Salesforce position. You've job hopped a little bit, probably for raises or maybe for experience to get more challenging, job opportunities and things like that. And then, so what was your, if you don't mind sharing, what was your pay progression? You went from like 40,000, and then did you hop at each job, like to a higher pay scale?
Yeah. So I started at that 40 at Walmart e-commerce. That was kind of leaving with just like junior admin, kind of like what you're preaching right now. Hopped each time, and each time was what you said. It was for experience, to get stuff that was harder, more hands-on with something specific, plus a raise. Every time that I moved, I got a raise, up to where I'm at now, which is, roughly 3 years, like we talked about, 4 Salesforce jobs later, and I'm now at 120. So pretty big jump from like where I was at and what I was doing, and what I also thought was possible, I would say, just in the realm of like time. Because think about it, like I'm this dude trying to run his own little wrap shop, and whatever that's paying me, it's peanuts, right? Like not really anything. I'm trying to get it off the ground. So I was probably like a lot of people that you've spoken to, when you're talking about money, and you're like, yeah, maybe like 3-4 years from now, I'm going to make 60, and that's going to be awesome. And I'm not knocking on that number at all. That's great money. But at the same time, once I got into that space, like you said, and I started asking about people's numbers, and I started researching it. And more than anything, when I started seeing the demand, like the demand is way higher than the supply right now. So then that's really what started pushing me to go all in, because I thought, not only can I gain this huge skill set and have an advantage as far as like a curve standard goes, but you can also ask a lot more because they need it, right? And if you're good at what you do, they don't mind paying it. So I'm going to go for it, right?
I'm so glad you're saying what you're saying, because it's like, coming from me, it's one thing, right? Like, and people are like, oh, he's just trying to get subscribers, or he wants somebody to click on it, or he wants somebody to buy his program or his course or whatever. And it's like, number one, Jordan is not, he's not part of our program. He's not a membership. I literally reached out to Jordan because of the amazing stuff he's posting on LinkedIn. And we are not like friends from high school or anything like that.
We don't have anything here that I'm trying to push. He's trying to push on me.
Exactly. So I think that's the point. And it's that you can go from making $40,000 at your first job. And I honestly feel that anybody, especially in the US, Canada, the UK, you can make $60,000 at your first job. You don't have to go all the way down to 40. You can make 60 if you follow the right processes, but the scale happens the same way, where you go, whatever you're making at your first job, to making 80,000, 90,000, 100,000. And then look at Jordan 3 years in making $120,000. Like, that's nuts. And he's not consulting. And I think there's another thing to point out, if I'm not mistaken, like, I'm just going to call this out. Maybe I'm wrong. But everybody says, they're like, yeah, there's a little bit of demand for admins, but no one's really hiring admins. And you really need to be a developer to get a job that pays anything or has any demand. And I keep sitting over here sort of in my, behind the scenes in my little world. And I'm going, that's just not what I see. Like, I see people landing admin jobs all the time. I see people adding to, getting developer jobs all the time. And the way I see it is that every single company that has Salesforce needs an admin. Every single company that has Salesforce does not need a developer. So number one, there's that. Now in the consulting world, developers are that they're a little more rare, so they're more in demand. But I just want to sort of like try to annihilate this misconception that are developers more in demand than admins? Yes, I will agree with that. Are there any shortage of admin jobs? No, like both of them are super in demand. Like, stop creating another limiting belief. So I think I've got this right, but you would consider yourself an admin. Like, you're not, you wouldn't call yourself a developer, right?
No, not by any stretch. I've done, 2-3 Apex triggers before or something like that, a couple of Visual Force pages. And I think you bring up an interesting point. Thinking of the company I'm at right now, right? We have a large team. It's a larger company that I work for at this point. And you're exactly right. Like with the developer thing, I think that's right on point. Like, yeah, you probably could get in there. It's niche. You could probably make more. It's more in demand. But to your point, like me just thinking of the current position I'm in, and I don't know the exact numbers, but throwing out numbers, we have like 20 people or something on my team, and it's like 3 people are developers. So you have all these other people that are doing something, admins, senior admins, business analysts. So you have way more of these people, and I've kind of felt the same way. I feel like there are probably great opportunities out there for developers, but I haven't ran into that either. And I've seen a lot of that since being in the Salesforce ecosystem, that they try to kind of push this narrative of like, yeah, they're just not what they used to be with these admin things. And I just haven't seen it either. I haven't ran into that myself.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I've had the same, perception here. And it's like, I can look over here. And even when we talk about money, it's like, there's so many things I hear, and it's like, developers are more in demand than admins. Developers make more than admins, and it's like, so I'll put this link in the description, and I've talked about this before. But Salesforce Ben has they have a blog they did on average Salesforce salaries in 2020. And if you look at administrators, and I know, and I do somewhat agree that these numbers are a little bit high. I think what they're calling a junior administrator is probably somebody with like 5 years experience or less or something like that. But it's sort of beside the point. The point I'm trying to make is, it says right here that the average Salesforce developer makes about $150,000 a year. Okay. And then the average Salesforce like analyst or administrator or consultant or project manager, all of those make about $130,000 to $140,000 a year. So I agree, developers probably make a little bit more, but we're not talking 30% more, 50% more. We're talking about 2 positions where if you like programming and you think you want to be a developer, go do it. There's demand for it. You can make a little more money. That's perfect. But if you're like, I don't want to do development, I'm scared of it, I don't want to learn a new language, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, unless you just think making $125K instead of $140K is just like that, you're not going to be able to live the lifestyle you want with that difference, then okay, fine. But let's just say they both get paid really well. Especially when you consider we're talking about these numbers with 3 years experience, right? And I had sort of the same experience as you did. I had to go into consulting to see the numbers you did. And after 5 years, so this would be back in 2016, after 5 years, I was making like 110,000, busting it as a consultant. So you're doing better than I did at 3 years in, and than what I was at 5 years in. And I was, I don't know that I was working harder than you, but I know that I was probably working for like 15 different companies a year, doing all kind of crazy projects, and no telling what was going to be happening next week. And so kudos to that. I mean, it sounds like, and I had no idea, in all honesty to the audience, I had no idea that Jordan was like, when we hopped on the call today, no way did I think he was making 120K. Like, that's great. But I think it just shows potential. And we're not talking San Francisco. We're not talking about, the middle of, to your point, the place you're in Utah seems to be having like this tech awakening. But we're not talking San Francisco where he's paying rent of like $5,000 a month. So it's,
I think those are all great points. And I have a podcast on Spotify called Head in the Clouds, if anybody wants to listen. But I do a specific episode on that take of like money, like what should you be making? And I actually compare it to like where I live in Utah. So trying to recall some of those numbers, I would say, we're pretty conservative. If you guys have, wherever you guys are based out of, Idaho, Iowa, places like that. I mean, that's Utah. Like we're fairly conservative here. It's a smaller size, not landmass, but as far as like people that live here, it's smaller. So we do have this tech like awakening, like Brad has said, but at the same time, we're not paying these crazy prices on like houses yet. Depending on the area you're living in, obviously, but Yeah, I wouldn't say by any stretch that it's going to be like a comparison to California or New York or something on the East Coast like that, like fairly conservative. And that's like what's been available for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So I know we've sort of beat everybody over the head with number one, take your shot. Like don't sort of like write off Salesforce because you don't think like you're good enough, or you don't have the background for it, or you don't have the degree for it, or whatever it is. Like, number one, don't write it off because of that. Like, take your shot. Don't count yourself out. But I think I promised you guys on the intro some actionable takeaways, and I want to make sure we don't miss out, because this is a big part of like why I wanted to talk to Jordan specifically. I didn't just want to tell everybody how much money he makes. I think that should encourage you. I think that it should tell you there is not just light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I think there's light at the front of the tunnel. Like, this thing is like, it's bright all the way through.
For sure.
And I don't, I think a lot of people hear me preach Salesforce and they're like, you're hiding something, you're hiding the secret. And I'll see people post and they're like, hours a week do these people have to work to make this kind of money? And it's like, the only secret is that people hear something that sounds too good to be true, and then they go, it must be too good to be true. And I would just say, like, most things that sound too good to be true are too good to be true. And then every now and then there's something that sounds too good to be true, and it's just true, and you should listen and pay attention. And you don't have to pay us a dime for anything. You can do this yourself. But I mean, there are paid things out there that you can pay for, and it's fine. It's not, I charge for stuff. Other people charge for stuff. Some of it's valuable. Some of it's not. You can get a ton of free stuff. You can DIY this whole thing, just like Jordan did, just like I did. And so you don't have to pay for anything, but there's some good stuff out there that can streamline your approach. But let's talk about what you've been doing on LinkedIn and how I became aware of you. And I think there's a lot of action that can be taken here. I don't think you have to do everything Jordan's doing. I don't think you have to do it with the intensity or the quality or the consistency or any of that Jordan is doing. But I do talk to my people that I coach, and I say, you need to have a LinkedIn profile that's spot on. You need, and we can talk about what spot on is. I mean, you can look at my other videos about what a spot on LinkedIn profile looks like. You need to be engaged on LinkedIn. You can't just make a profile and then walk away. Like, that's the same as a resume. You have to get engaged and become part of the community. Like, we all talk about this Ohana, but if you're not part of the Ohana, then you're on the outside of it. And that's all there is to it. And with any, one of these like family communities, you have to put in more than you take away. And if you're just taking, you're going to get burnt. Like, everybody's going to see it. You're going to come in and you're going to be like, I have 5,000 people that I'm connected with. And by the way, can I get a job? And they're like, we don't know you. We don't know who you are. I looked at your LinkedIn profile. You haven't posted, commented, said anything in the last 2 years. Like, who even are you? And I think I've always been a big advocate of go post, maybe write an article, maybe do some feature, content, make sure your about section's on point, make sure your job history is on point. But you took that concept and you just sort of like broke it in half and said, like, no, that's not enough, Brad. Like, and I think that was meaningful to me, though. I was like, you're like, I'm telling these people exactly what they need to do on LinkedIn, and I've got it. And then Jordan comes out of left field like, Brad, you're an amateur. You got to really get it on LinkedIn, and let me show you how to do it. So anyway, go check out Jordan if you want to know how to do it. His LinkedIn profile is in the description. So go check him out. But talk to us about what you're doing on LinkedIn, and sort of give us a couple of numbers, and then tell us, number one, sort of why you're doing it. And then number two, why you think following, even doing 10% of what Jordan's doing on LinkedIn, even just doing 10% of what he's doing, where do you think that could put your average person?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I'm glad that Brad gave me a chance to talk about it and wanted to talk about it, because money aside, degrees aside, anything that you want to take out of that first half of this conversation that we've had, I'm blowing smoke, whatever you want to think, right? I think the biggest point to getting to that, because, I feel like anybody's going to have this. You let people know like what you make or what you're doing or blah, blah, blah. And you're going to have people out there that hate on you, that don't like it, think you're, getting paid too much, that you're underqualified for what you do. And so I think this is like where the LinkedIn part steps in, because Brad hit on some great points that I would just reiterate the whole thing of his mentality that he keeps going back to of, if you think it's too good to be true and you walk away, that's kind of like on you, right? I think for myself, I've always tried to look into finding those evidences of like, well, if this guy can make this, why can't I make that, right? Like, he's doing this, so if I can learn how to do that, I can get paid that, right? And so that's kind of been my judge a little bit. But as far as like LinkedIn goes, bringing that all together, everything in the Salesforce world, as far as like demand and trying to find these hidden admin jobs that I feel like are out there, but if they are hidden, the biggest, I would say, key to my latter success so far has been, I had a LinkedIn profile probably the whole time. Was I posting? No. Was I commenting? No. Was I looking at it and consuming content? Probably what 90% of us do. Yeah, I was. And I was probably trying to learn from it and checking out other people and what they were doing to get to where they're at. But yeah, around, I would say July. So it's really only been 2 months. And this is a similar example to like the money thing. I went from, I probably had 1,200 connections, and keep in mind, that's probably 3 or 4 years that I had the profile, right? Basically doing nothing, just connecting with people from these jobs. Around 1,200 people as far as like connections are concerned, to today in literally 2 months, up to 6,500, from 100 people looking at my profile over 90-day period of time to 3,500 as of today. So once again, that's just a testament as far as like how well the platform is working. I think to get into maybe some of the trench stuff, if you guys are interested in this, like I said from the beginning, big Gary V guy, big all on that kind of stuff, right? So I try to watch a lot of that. And something I've seen him as well as others hammer home for like the last year is all about like this algorithm that I don't understand on LinkedIn and how it works and how the platform's working, and comparing that to Facebook of 2012, or, just really this huge growth in the platform, I guess is what you could say. So they've really hammered that home, and that was in my head of like why to maybe start doing it, because I saw an opportunity. I've heard about the opportunity. I was seeing people make an opportunity out of it. And so getting back to what we're talking about here, finding a job really and getting paid more than what you get paid, it's going to be real hard to do that, in my opinion, if nobody knows who you are. Like, you could be the best Salesforce person ever that should be a Salesforce MVP every single year, based upon just technical skills and what you know how to do. But what does that do for you if nobody knows how to find you, if nobody knows what you do? Like, you know how to do it, great, but how does a recruiter know what you do? How does a potential employer know what you do? How do they find you? How are they going to contact you? You turn in this resume, as Brad said, this piece of paper that's super passive that goes on a stack with everybody else or digitally, right? And it just doesn't make you stand out. How do you stand out on paper? I feel like that's super hard to do. So LinkedIn has become this thing for me where I just basically decided I'm going to start posting consistently. And the goal at first was 3 times a week. I'm going to figure out all these things that I wish I would have known 3 years ago in Salesforce. I'm going to start posting that because nobody's doing it. So that's my gap. So, okay, even if it's basic, and I think that's what deters a lot of people from that DM me and hit me in the comments, are like, yeah, I wish I could do that, but I'm new, or I don't know a lot. And it's like, honestly, if all you know how to do is reset a password or manage users, who's really posting it? I could think of, 5, 6 people that I look up to as far as consistent pushing content around Salesforce. Brad's one of them. David Liu's another one. If you haven't heard of him, Narendra Singh is another one, right? So these other people that I look up to that have blogs, they're easy to find because they post so consistently. So that's what I wanted to do. And I think that has really played into, one, a lot of gratification of like, yeah, it's nice to help people and see them progress. I love that. But let's look at it like a selfish way for a minute. How much easier is that now making it for me to get another job, or to have someone come find me, right? They know that I'm posting consistently. They know that I know how to do the job because they see me do a tutorial on it. They can literally go to my blog. They can go to my YouTube site. They can go to my podcast, all these different outlets now. And on my LinkedIn, right? All these featured articles that I've put up, that they can say, oh, we need a guy to do this and we're willing to pay X amount. But I think the big but is for employers is that they don't want to take a risk, right? So Okay, 120 for somebody that may or may not know how to do it and can't step in to do it. Okay, well, that's a pretty big risk, right? Like, why do we want to take that? But if they can look at somebody and say, go look at their blog, go look at their YouTube, look at LinkedIn. They literally post about it every day of how they know how to do this job. We're not taking a risk. He knows how to do it. So it just becomes a no-brainer. So I would just like add on to sum all that stuff up. I know that was a little bit of a rant, but to add on to what we had just talked about, you can be really good at what you do. And I guess the way I think of it is, I can't think of his last name. I think it's Robert Kiyosaki, the guy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yep. He has like a quote out there where basically same thing happened to him. He sold his book. It became a bestseller. Somebody was upset with him because they said it wasn't really written very well. And he just kind of leans back and says, you're right, it wasn't, but it's the best selling, right? Like the end of the day, I sold it better than what you sold your book. And that's what matters at the end of the day. So selling yourself on LinkedIn, selling what you know how to do, that's the end game anyways. So
spot on. I mean, that is all spot on. And I think we should point out too, if you just want to share how many Salesforce certifications you currently have.
That's why I feel like I get this a lot of just like people talking about, being paid too much or underqualified or blah, blah, blah. But I only have my admin certification, which is what everybody tends to get to play the game. I don't have a college degree. I've only been doing it for 3 years. So I feel like I'm a really good example of people out there that really just want to dive into Salesforce, go all in, learn how to use it, remember it, sell yourself. And I think it takes care of itself.
Yeah, I think it's just like you should have a big 1X certified at the front.
But, I really should 1X certified on my LinkedIn.
I just want to say like number one, like boom, like that's nuts. And it's no surprise though. Like I think people are going to be surprised and they're going to be like, hold on a second, like 3 years, $120,000, one certification, like what gives? And I'll tell you what gives. It's that if you're an employer, to your point, Jordan, if I'm an employer and I'm hiring people, I have been on hiring teams before where we're looking to hire people. And do you know how many people I see that are 2X certified, 3X certified, 10X certified? Seriously, 10X certified all the time. And I can't really tell what they know about Salesforce. I know they could pass a test. I know that exam dumps are available and those are a real thing. I know that you can study, practice exams, and you can do pretty good on a test. I know that the passing score on a test is a 65. That's not even good.
That's a D, man.
You passed and you're not even good at this. Like, so here's what I always say to people who are like getting ready to pass, try to take an exam. I'm like, if you think you know 50% of the material, you're going to pass because you're going to get a 50 and then you're going to guess on the rest of it and you're going to end up with a 65. You're okay. So the fact is, if you're getting these certifications, I don't care what it's in. If I'm a knowledgeable employer, I'm going, he might know 50% of what that certification covers. And then I can go look at Jordan's LinkedIn profile and I can go, one certification, and I might go, ooh, that's kind of strange, but then I'm going to go, oh, look at all these articles he has. Look at all these. Oh, shoot, he knows all about flows. Oh, he knows that we need to use flows. I've heard flows are popular. Whoa, look at these actual things he's done in the real world with this. Look at what he's done with Sales Cloud. Look at what he's done with it. And you're writing about it and you're telling people about it. I don't need you to have a certification. I don't need you to have 2 or 3 or 10. I know you're good because I can, I don't even need to interview you,
For sure. And just to lean in real quick, I don't want to go on a huge spree again here, but to add to that point, I would say, for people listening, it's the same idea. I feel like with like the whole degree, if we're not talking about Salesforce, right? It's like, it gives you an advantage. And I just think Brad has done a great job of like driving home this point so far, but there's so many more routes to get to the same end goal, right? Like my goal, just like your goal listening, was to get a job, to get paid well, to maximize what I could get paid, to learn Salesforce, to be able to utilize it in a good way, to be good for my employer. Like those are all my goals. I chose to go about it a different way. So if that's not you, I guess to the same point that Brad is making, like this fit my narrative because that's the type of person I felt like I am. That works well for me. I'm comfortable pushing stuff on LinkedIn. I'm comfortable writing these blogs and blah, blah, blah. So if you're not going to do that, if you take away listening to me sit here and talk about all about this stuff, and that's not you and not something you want to do, well, then just be prepared. Like Brad has probably taught you guys and showcases in all of his courses, then be prepared to have that 5X, certification. Be prepared to have that degree. Be prepared to have X amount of experience, because to me, those things are almost like what a degree is. It's kind of like this checkbox, right? So Brad could then look at you and say, okay, well, yeah, they have 5 certifications. They've got 5 years experience. They've been at these companies. They don't post anything, so I don't really know what they know. Mm-hmm. But I would imagine after 5 years and with these certifications, they're probably in a good spot, right? So I just think there's different ways to get to the same result. And this way for me has done that. Like it's kind of taking away those things for me of like, as Brad said, I still think I should probably push myself to get more certifications and all that. I think those are all great. But I do think pushing all these articles, pushing what I know how to do and all that is supplementing where I am today, right? Because it takes a lot of risk away. They can just easily see and literally watch it on YouTube and be like, yep, he did the flow right. Or nope, he's not good at it, but he's posting videos, right? Yeah. Either way, they can figure it out real quick.
Cool. So I think that's awesome. And I think obviously if anybody has any questions that you have for Jordan, I'm sure that he is happy to talk with you. His LinkedIn link is in the description of the video. So make sure you reach out to him and you can be his connection number 6001 or
whatever it was, right?
So reach out to him, message him, leave a comment. I'll make sure that if he doesn't see it, I'll shoot it over to him and make sure we get an answer to you. Yeah. The other thing is, and I did not talk to Jordan about this, but I'm just going to ask him now. Would it be cool if we put together so I think if we're going to make this actionable, so to me, the takeaway is, yes, Jordan's inspirational. Yes, this should be encouraging to beginners. This should be encouraging to people with 1 or 2 years experience. This should be encouraging to people with 3 years experience who aren't making 6 figures plus. That it is absolutely possible. And you should be figuring out what it is that you're not necessarily doing wrong, but that you weren't aware of to get to that level. And at that point, so I think the one thing that you're doing majorly different than everyone else is using LinkedIn, right? And I know you're using YouTube and you're doing that, but I found you on LinkedIn. Yeah. And I know a lot of people that are seeing your stuff on LinkedIn, and it's quality content. And to my point earlier, you don't have to post like Jordan. You don't have to be as good as Jordan. But if you have some things to point yourself to, or to point potential employers to, and to let your LinkedIn profile be a sales page for you, it's going to make your life a lot easier. Like I know people that I did not coach nearly as well on LinkedIn as the stuff that Jordan is doing. And I've had people that are using our program that are saying, Brad, the updates that you had me do to my LinkedIn profile, I didn't even apply for a job. And somebody reached out to me and offered me an interview. Like if you're doing what Jordan's doing, chances are you're going to have recruiters, hiring managers, reaching out to you. But definitely if you're applying for jobs, they're going to be going, whoa, like this is next level stuff right here. Yeah. So anyway, what I would like to offer is, what if we did something like Jordan's weekly pacing guide with the 3 things you should be doing on LinkedIn every week to increase your engagement and to increase your sort of that influence and attraction for your profile. Now, Jordan's probably over posting like 5, 6, 7 days a week, maybe even 2 or 3 times a day. You don't need to do that. But I bet we can get 3 tips from Jordan that you should be implementing on a weekly basis to help improve your LinkedIn engagement and improve your sellability on LinkedIn. So maybe not right here on the spot, but we'll give them a way to, we'll put it in the description so you guys can get it. And sort of you can print it out or put it on your desktop and remind yourself to hop on LinkedIn and make sure you're engaging on there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd love to help out with that. And really anybody, same with this offer, if it is something where you are familiar with LinkedIn even, and you just kind of want to know maybe some more nitty gritty stuff that you weren't super aware of, I'm happy to share that as well. Because I feel like at this point, I've looked at anything of, what is the chance of someone finding me on LinkedIn literally by changing my URL tag? Like I've changed my URL tag from Jordan Nelson's user 0002 to Jordan Nelson's Salesforce. So now when people type Salesforce, my name's going to pop up first. Like little stuff like that you guys just may not be aware of. I'm happy to help out with that as well.
Awesome. Well, I think that's some amazing tips. I know we ran it, 50 minutes into you guys, so I appreciate anyone who is actually listening right now. But yeah, so I appreciate you being on, Jordan, and
sure.
I think we'll certainly have to have you on again for when you're making 200K, right?
Yeah, call me back when I'm making 200K. I'd love it.
All right, awesome.
All right, have a good one.